Good morning, everyone. I want to say from the very beginning of my candid presentation or my candid assessment of how the administration is doing that from the executive memorandum on transparency issued by the president on his first full day in office to the full-blown open government directive to establishing powerful new lobbying restrictions for the executive branch, no organization has been more enthusiastic, optimistic, or excited about Gov 2.0 in the world of data transparency than the Sunlight Foundation. In many respects, this administration has gone further and faster than any administration before it. But now, 20 months later, it appears that the drive for data transparency has stalled. The Open Government Directive, the administration's now 10-month-old manifesto on government transparency, can either become a relic left on the dustbin of history or a transformative commitment to a new era of openness. Right now, it's teetering, we believe, someplace in between. As you may recall, the central thrust of that directive was its insistence that all government agencies create and implement their own open data plans, aimed at releasing high-value data for the public. The plans that resulted, however, were little more than aspirational. And in fact, 12 out of 30 agencies in the first set of those plans didn't list any data for future publication. And altogether, only 75 new data sets were listed. 75 new data sets. Needless to say, that was hugely, hugely disappointing. Enactment of these plans has always been soft, and now even faces greater uncertainty with the departure of OMB Director Peter Orszag and White House Ethics Counsel Norm Eisen. The directive is only as strong as its enforcement. To be sure, there have been some meaningful first steps from agencies and the White House. Certainly HHS and NASA both immediately come to mind as aggressively producing new projects that are on the cutting edge. The White House itself has taken some meaningful steps in posting its staffers' ethics filings online, requiring extensive stimulus lobbying disclosure, and posting the White House visitor logs online. This is unique and the first time any administration has ever done it. But these are not well-established policies. There are exemptions to this data we do not know. We don't have any information about what the exemptions are. And all of the initiatives need a steady hand and a clear commitment to mature into a permanent, reliable, and effective policy. And one central Obama campaign promise, the very first one that you see here, quote unquote, to create a central internet database of lobbying reports, ethics records, and campaign finance filings are not even on the drawing boards. Data.gov started with enormous promise. A single catalog for all government data is a very exciting concept. As it's evolved, however, we have gotten a better website and a more attractive design and somewhat improved organization for the data sets. But it's still pretty mediocre as a data repository, and the types of data that are available remain an enormous concern. It turns out, for example, that the government has some pretty interesting ideas about what they regard as high-value data. The Department of Interior seems to think that the population count of wild horses and burros is high value, but records of safety violations, like the ones that seem to have led to the Upper Branch Mine disaster, are not. We want to see data that can be used to hold government and the entities that report to it accountable. Records and data that would allow people to assess the effectiveness and the efficiency of federal programs, policies, and initiatives, and the competence and integrity of employees and contractors, and the management of public resources. Recovery.gov, the government's signature project to demonstrate transparency around economic stimulus spending, is little more than a qualified success. The idea of collecting job information at the most local level was extremely, overly, indeed, optimistic, and ended with the vice president making excuses for the data's poor quality on The Daily Show. Now let's take a look at USAspending.gov, the project that then Senator Obama and Senator Tom Coburn championed into law in 2007. USAspending.gov was created to provide the public with information about how our tax dollars are spent. It was launched in late 2007, but it's already gone through 3 redesigns, each one flashier than the next, with gradients and maps and now a kind of gap-minder visualization tool. It's pretty impressive looking. Unfortunately, its data is almost completely useless. To demonstrate just how flawed it is, Sunlight is announcing today a new project called Clear Spending, clearspending.com. This project, the hard work of Sunlight's Caitlin Lee and Kevin Webb, is an ongoing analysis of the grants data in USA spending. We started with a methodology for evaluating data quality that's been used by the GAO. It's a pretty simple methodology. Federal spending is actually reported in 2 pieces. Individual transactions are sent to USA Spending. There's also a separate, somewhat redundant process where total spending by program is reported to the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, or CFDA. It's possible to tally up the USA Spending records by program and compare those totals to what you find in CFDA. When the 2 don't match, we know we have a problem. That's the heart of the method. We also looked at reporting, whether the reporting required on time, and whether all the mandatory fields were filled out. Then we automated those tests so we could run them against all 10 million rows of USA Spending, of the USA Spending database. The results aren't pretty. We found over $1.3 trillion of broken reporting in 2009 alone. That's fully half of the spending for that year. Some of the numbers are too big, some of the numbers are too small, and some of them aren't there at all. Others don't have the detail that's required, and some were reported months later after the law required. The data in this USA Spending is broken. You can't trust any of the aggregate numbers you get from the site. Answers to questions about federal spending that are above the micro level. When we say things just don't add up, that is precisely what we mean. The government has known about this problem for some time, and they say they're working to fix it. But in fact, all we have gotten are redesigned websites, each one with data just as unreliable as the one before it. We're beginning to worry that the administration is more interested in style than substance. If we settle for this kind of superficial approach, Gov 2.0 will soon be forgotten, and huge opportunities will have been wasted. Government has learned to say the right things. Now we need the administration to actually get serious about the commitment. There's a lot of work left to do. These are not easy tasks, and they are certainly not glamorous ones. But these are the types of challenges that we must undertake if the promise of Gov 2.0 is going to be realized. For starters, we need to take on some of the responsibility for making this happen ourselves. And by us, I mean the community of Americans who are concerned about accountability for our government. And that's a lot of us. And we wear all kinds of political labels, from conservatives to liberals to libertarians to tea and coffee party activists. Our job is to hold the administration's feet to the fire. Bureaucrats aren't going to act in a certain way just because someone asks them nicely. Government isn't going to change how and when it makes data available, even when good people on the inside want to make it happen, because of a directive. It's not going to happen until laws are changed and executive orders are issued, or until enforcers are given real power and the president himself makes it a priority. And finally, we have to admit that Gov 2.0 isn't happening until citizens are truly engaged in helping to demand and to co-create it. We can still have the government that the administration has promised us, one that is truly open, participatory, and collaborative, but it will not happen until we push for it. Thank you.